Did you know that before Hollywood made Johnny Depp one of the most recognized actors in the world, his true dream wasn't acting at all? His first love was music. Not the kind of polished pop star lifestyle we usually imagine, but raw, messy, guitar-driven music. Long before anyone knew him as Captain Jack Sparrow or Edward Scissorhands, Johnny was just another kid with long hair and a guitar, desperate to make a living through sound. Acting wasn't in his plans. Fame wasn't the goal. He wanted to be on stage, not a movie set, and even after Hollywood swept him up and turned him into a global icon, he never let go of music. It stayed with him, like a lifeline, something that kept him alive through the storms of fame and controversy. When you step into Johnny Depp's musical world, you start to see a different man. Not the one we see in tabloids, not the eccentric actor playing strange roles, but someone chasing something far more personal. Because music, for Depp, was never about building a career or climbing charts. It was about expression, survival, and connection. Every chord he played, every lyric he sang, every album he worked on, these became pieces of his story, reflections of who he really was beneath the makeup and costumes. If we go back to his early years, you'll see just how deeply music was rooted in his life. Growing up in Florida, young Johnny didn't dream of Hollywood red carpets. He dreamed of smoky bars, packed crowds, and the electric energy of live performances. He picked up a guitar as a teenager and spent hours locked away, practicing until his fingers ached. He joined garage bands, small-time groups that played local gigs, and he believed with everything in him that music was his future. When he moved to Los Angeles, it wasn't to chase acting roles. It was to chase music. He played in a band called The Kids, and for a while it felt like they might actually make it big. They opened for bigger acts and built a reputation. But like so many bands of that era, the dream slipped through their fingers. It was around this time that fate intervened. Through a friend, he landed his first audition. Suddenly, Hollywood came calling. He took a role in A Nightmare on Elm Street, and from there the acting offers never stopped. Before he knew it, Johnny Depp was on the fast track to movie stardom. But here's what people often forget. He never gave up on music. Even as acting swallowed his time, he kept a guitar close. Whenever he needed to escape, whenever the pressure felt too heavy, he picked it up and played. By the 1990s, he was already one of the biggest names in Hollywood, but he made his first major step into music with a band called P. Now, this band wasn't polished or built for mainstream success. It was messy, underground, and unapologetic. He started it with his friends, and even had big names involved, like Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Imagine that. Johnny Depp, the movie star, sweating it out on small stages with a punk-inspired band that most people never even heard of. To him, that was real freedom. On a movie set, he had to play characters. In music, he could finally just be Johnny. His passion for collaboration pushed him even further. One of his biggest surprises came when he worked with Oasis, one of the most famous rock bands of the 90s. He didn't just show up for publicity, he actually played guitar on their track Fadin' Out. It wasn't a stunt. He blended into the music like he belonged there. For Depp, being in the studio with musicians wasn't about showing off his fame. It was about belonging to a community of people who spoke the same language he did, the language of sound. And that's what makes his musical journey so different from other actors who dabble in music. He wasn't chasing validation. He was chasing authenticity. Years later, Depp's musical career would evolve into something much bigger. He joined forces with Alice Cooper and Joe Perry from Aerosmith to form Hollywood Vampires, a supergroup that stunned the world. They didn't just release an album, they toured, filled arenas, and honored fallen rock legends through their performances. Hollywood Vampires wasn't a novelty act. It was a serious project with serious musicians, and Johnny wasn't there as a celebrity mascot. He was fully in it, playing guitar, performing live, carrying his weight on stage. When you watch him perform with the Vampires, you see something raw. The costumes are gone, the characters are gone. What you see is Johnny Depp, the musician, living the life he always dreamed of before Hollywood took over. But his most powerful and personal music moment came in 2022 with Jeff Beck. Together, they released an album called 18 for Depp. This wasn't about commercial success. It wasn't about making a hit record. It was about survival. This was at the height of his public battles when the media was dissecting every piece of his personal life. And in the middle of that chaos, he poured his soul into music. Jeff Beck, one of the most respected guitarists of all time, saw something real in Johnny and chose to collaborate with him. That in itself says a lot. The album was filled with bluesy tones, rock influences, and an almost haunting vulnerability. Fans who listened said they could hear the pain, the resilience, and the fight for survival in every chord. It was more than an album. It was Johnny reclaiming his voice when the world tried to silence him. That's the thing about Johnny Depp's musical journey. It's not about chasing Billboard charts or streaming numbers. It's about life itself. He once admitted that when acting became overwhelming, when the roles and the makeup and the fame piled up, music saved him. Every guitar he picked up became therapy. Every stage he stepped on became a place where he could breathe again. Acting gave him wealth and fame, but music gave him peace. And let's not forget, Johnny Depp is not just dabbling in this world. He's immersed in it in a way that feels almost spiritual. He owns over 70 guitars. Just let that number sink in for a moment. 70 guitars. For some people, even owning one feels like a treasure, something they keep safe and play from, time to time. But for Johnny, guitars aren't just instruments. They're extensions of who he is. Each one carries a piece of his journey, a memory, a connection to a time or place or person that mattered to him. Some of these guitars are vintage treasures, the kind you only find after years of searching, tucked away in collections or traded. Quietly among musicians who know their worth, these are the guitars with history etched into their strings, instruments that once rang out in smoky bars or under blinding stage lights decades ago. Holding them is like holding a piece of rock. History, and Johnny treats them with that same reverence. Then there are the custom-built ones, designed specifically to match his unique style of playing, crafted by expert hands who know how to shape wood and wire into something personal. And then there are the gifts, guitars handed to him by friends, fellow musicians, even legends who saw something in Johnny and wanted to give him a piece of themselves. Each one of these is more than wood and metal. Each one is a story. For most of us, a guitar is just that, an instrument, something you pick up, strum a little, maybe learn a song or two. But for Johnny, they're like talismans. He surrounds himself with them, not just as tools to make music, but as objects filled with memory, energy, and even protection. It's almost ritualistic. A certain guitar might remind him of a night on tour, another of a moment in the studio with a friend, another of a song that never got released but still lives in his head. He doesn't see them as clutter. He sees them as sacred, each one carrying a weight that only he understands. And here's the fascinating part. Johnny has been known to trade guitars with rock legends, almost like kids trading baseball cards in the schoolyard. Except instead of cardboard pictures, these are priceless instruments with decades of history. Imagine Joe Perry handing Johnny a guitar and Johnny passing him one in return. It's not about money, it's about respect, about friendship, about giving someone a piece of your soul in exchange for theirs. These exchanges tell you a lot about who Johnny really is. For him, it's never about showing off. It's about connection. When you see Johnny surrounded by these guitars, it doesn't feel like a collector flaunting trophies. It feels like a man surrounded by pieces of his own life, each one whispering a different story. One might take him back to his days in the 90s, playing in tiny clubs with his band P, sweating under dim lights, lost in the raw power of sound. Another might remind him of long nights in the studio, recording with Oasis, blending into the fabric of one of the biggest bands of their time. Another could carry the weight of his years with Hollywood vampires, standing shoulder to shoulder with Alice Cooper and Joe Perry, playing for thousands of screaming fans. Each guitar, a chapter. Each guitar, a diary entry. If you think about it, guitars for Johnny aren't just instruments. They're almost like anchors in a life that's been anything but stable. Hollywood has given him fame, fortune, and chaos. The media has taken his personal struggles and broadcast them to the world. But through all of that noise, these guitars have been steady, waiting for him, offering him the chance to drown out everything else with the simple act of making music. There's something almost poetic about that. Picture Johnny sitting alone in his home, surrounded by dozens of guitars lined up against the walls. Maybe he picks one at random, runs his fingers along the strings, and suddenly he's somewhere else. Maybe he's back in Florida as a teenager, dreaming of making it big. Maybe he's in a London studio with Jeff Beck, pouring his soul into a blues riff while the world outside judges him for things that have nothing to do with music. Or maybe he's just Johnny, stripped of everything. No costumes, no cameras, no audience. Just a man and his guitar, finally at peace. The thing about guitars is that they hold energy. Any musician will tell you that. You can feel the songs that have been played on them, the way the wood has absorbed years of sound, the way the strings vibrate with memory. For Johnny, who has always been sensitive, always searching for meaning in objects, this is powerful. He doesn't just play them, he listens to them. He believes they carry the ghosts of past performances, the echoes of joy, pain, and passion that were poured into them before they ever landed in his hands. And this is why, when you see Johnny Depp with a guitar, it doesn't feel like he's posing. It feels like he's communing with something. He holds them like they're alive. He plays them like they're speaking back to him. It's intimate, almost sacred. And when he's on stage, when the crowd is roaring and the lights are blinding, he doesn't look like a Hollywood star trying to fit in. He looks like a musician who's exactly where he belongs. 70 guitars, 70 stories, 70 pieces of Johnny Depp's soul scattered across decades of music, friendships, collaborations, and personal battles. Some people measure their lives in photos, others in awards. Johnny measures his in guitars. And maybe that's the truest way to understand him. Not through the headlines, not through the characters he plays, but through the instruments he collects, protects, and plays when the world feels too heavy. Because in the end, the guitars are more than just objects. They are proof that music has always been his first love, his safest home, his greatest refuge. They remind us that before the costumes and the fame, Johnny Depp was just a boy with a dream, strumming away, trying to make sense of life through sound. And in many ways, he still is. What most people don't realize is that Johnny Depp doesn't just play. He writes. He has notebooks filled with lyrics and songs that have never been shared with the public. Insiders say entire collections of unreleased music exist, locked away, waiting. Maybe they'll surface one day, or maybe they never will. Maybe those songs are for him alone, a private lifeline in a world that has so often felt too loud. When you look at his collaboration with Jeff Beck, you realize something important. This wasn't about trying to reinvent himself. It was about revealing himself. The critics who understood it said the album wasn't designed for mass radio play or viral streaming hits. It was designed for truth, for honesty, for survival. Johnny wasn't acting, he wasn't performing, he was simply being, and the journey isn't finished. Even now, there are strong rumors of new projects on the horizon. Hollywood vampires are expected to continue making music and touring, and Johnny is said to be working on solo material as well. That's the thing with him. No matter what Hollywood throws his way, no matter what storms rise in his personal life, music will always be there. It isn't just a side hustle. It's his heartbeat. So the real question is this. How do you see Johnny Depp now? Is he an actor who happens to play music on the side, or is he a musician who just happened to stumble into acting? Because when you really dive into his story, you start to see that Hollywood may have been the accident. Music was always the plan. Think about it. All those roles, all those characters, all those costumes, they built a legend. But beneath it all, beneath the glitter and chaos, is a man holding a guitar, using music to tell the truths he could never say out loud. That's Johnny Depp, and that's why his secret life in music matters so much. Now I want to hear from you after hearing about his albums, his collaborations, and his journey. How do you see him? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you see him as more of an actor dabbling in music or as a musician who conquered Hollywood by chance? If you enjoyed this deep dive into Johnny's hidden world, don't go anywhere. I've got another video lined up about his most emotional live performances and the surprising stories behind them. Make sure to check it out next. And hey, if you learned something new today, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories like this, and share this video with a friend who still thinks Depp is only Captain Jack Sparrow. Because once they see this side of him, they'll be just as surprised as you were. At the end of the day, Johnny Depp isn't just a Hollywood legend. He's a musician, a storyteller, and a man who found his truest self in the sound of a guitar.